right, topic 4. The devices we use. Small screens are big as more consumers choose smartphones over iPads and tablets. And look to the sky. News drones are coming as soon as the FAA issues regulations for unmanned aerial vehicles. There is no shortage of appetite for any kind of a device. I mean, that's what's going to continue to drive the market. I was just looking the other day at even the curved screen TVs. I mean, everybody's going to have one in the next 5 years. Absolutely everybody. You know, the flat is just going to be a turnoff because you're going to get much better, you know, sort of 3D effect. So, I mean, everybody's going to have their own personal drone before you know it.
Couldn't be.
I'm a little bit of a skeptic on the television thing, just because I think a lot of people find that they have gotten a set and it's good enough and they don't need to improve it. I mean, that's what the television industry has been complaining about.
They tried the flat screens.
But that's what they said about 3D TV, and I'm sure all of us went out and bought huge 3D televisions.
This is going to be a version of 3D without the 3D.
I think the interesting shift, you know, in 2014 we saw phones getting bigger. Android phones were always bigger, but iPhones definitely got bigger this past year, and it does change behavior. There was an interesting study by the app Pocket, which is a Read It Later app, that found that people who went from the iPhone 5 or 5S to the iPhone 6 or 6 Plus, the larger the screen, the more reading they did on it, the more video they watched on it. You could see a very significant behavioral shift. And from a news organization's perspective, it's very common now to be getting the majority of your digital traffic on mobile devices, and the majority of that is on smartphones. That's shifted advertising. You know, we were talking before about how a typical company will make about 1/10 as much on its mobile ads as it does on its web ads on a desktop or a laptop. And then, of course, that's a tiny fraction of what they made in print beforehand. So I think they're seeing more intrusive ads that are forcing you to do things, getting in your way, forcing you to tap a few times to get away from them. And it's another big shift. It's almost as big as the shift from print to the web.
I also find it interesting, though, that the size is, phones are getting bigger. Remember, it was a bragging point, the smaller, the smaller, the smaller. Now they're getting bigger and bigger, and the tablets are shrinking. Now, so it's sort of one device. I find that a very cumbersome size. You know, sort of a 4x6 photograph. It's like, when you go, hello? You know, with your hand around
you know what? I went into the Apple store, and then I was playing with the 6 Plus, falling in love with it. And then I walked out, and I said, oh, I never held it up to my ear. I was doing everything else. And it was so wonderful. And I thought, oh.
Well, but what percentage of your time with your phone do you spend with it at your ear? I mean, for me, it's basically zero.
Well, and even if you were on a call, right, you'd be using earbuds so you don't grow some funky thing. Get out of here. For health reasons, you have to.
Well,
you're irradiating your brain.
Yes,
I don't use my phone enough to irradiate.
Yeah, that's what I think. So, but I agree with
you. Just proceed with caution.
Is that a prediction for the new year? Just mass brain cancer?
Are you one of those people you think that cell phones can
you wrap it in tin foil?
My understanding is that legitimate medical concerns have been raised about the wisdom of pressing your smartphone to your head as you make
Jeff wants us to move on. Drones. He wants to talk about drones.
No, that is correct. I just meant that as the screens are getting bigger and the reading, I could see I would be in love with the reading, but it never occurred to me that its original function was actually the phone, and I wasn't thinking about that. So it's kind of interesting.
Okay, I'll give you a drone. My colleague at Northeastern, Jeff Howe, actually went out and got a drone for his students to play with. But it wasn't that expensive. It was like $1,000. You attach a camera to it. It's really an incredible tool for doing certain types of aerial shots where you're certainly not going to rent a helicopter.
How high can it go?
Not all that high. I mean,
taller than a house?
Is it
taller
noisy?
than a house, yes.
Is it noisy?
No, I've seen one.
No, it's quite quiet. It's quite quiet.
Oh, great.
I mean, it raises all kinds of privacy.
So I'm looking up and here's the drone.
And yet at the same time, you think of a massive storm or something like that. You send a drone out to get some footage. It's terrific.
Yeah, and you'll be saying that until it shows up right over your fence at your house. And, you know, peeks in.
As long as we have a Second Amendment, I don't have to worry about the drone.
There's also just the sort of the safety element, which is what the FAA is really trying to regulate, because there have been a number of incidents already of drones interfering with actual planes in the air, you know, because they can reach up to the same sorts of heights, and there are a lot of risks to go along with it too.
Absolutely.
I'm not certain that we're going to see this boom in 2015 because I don't think the regulations are going to be clear enough by the end of the year.
It's just a tool. I mean, I don't know that we're ever going to see a boom, but it's great for certain types of stories.
It's fun to talk about.
I think the fact that a lot of people have gone out and bought those machines that makes things from plastic.
3D printers.
Oh, the 3D printers?
It says to me that there will be a lot of interest in drones as well. But I think there are a lot of people who are interested in that technology. I'm not uninterested. I just don't want it to be noisy or over my head.
I don't want it anywhere near. What would you do if there was a drone by your place?
I told you I
hovering
saw
around
one at
you.
Lake George summer before last. It was the freakiest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, I don't like
came
it.
and they move really, really slowly too. And it's like, I don't know what it was, where it was going.
No, I get that there are, to be a little more serious, that there are conflict zones where you might think twice or three times about sending in a reporter because you're afraid they're going to be kidnapped and executed, where a drone could actually be incredibly useful. I just don't like
the American Army's argument. Drones can be very useful in conflict zones.
Exactly.
Right, I'm talking for a more pacifistic purpose, but I'm really spooked by the idea of them, like you mentioned, flying up in the airspace.
I saw some drone coverage of the 8-foot snowstorm south of Buffalo.
Perfect.
I mean, it was interesting.
It is the one of all the changes that we're talking about is the one that has the greatest chance to radically change our physical environment.
That's true.
Because you could easily imagine a universe where you walk outside and there are 30 drones in the air.
Drone lanes.